You didn't disappear, you evolved out of a game that can't see you anymore. Before you could name it, your nervous system did. The crowds, the timelines, the meetings that demand a performance your soul won't give. From Thoth's lens and depth psychology, what looks like isolation is an upgrade. Once awareness crosses a threshold, mass participation becomes psychologically impossible. Stepping back isn't collapse, it's conservation. Silence becomes a laboratory, solitude, a kiln. Shadow is integrated without an audience. Energy stops leaking into arguments you can't win because they aren't about truth. You aren't rejecting people. You're refusing the projection field that feeds on you. This film is your map through the cocoon to the borderlands where work, community, and service are rebuilt for coherence, not applause. If society runs on projection, the first awakening is seeing the screen. You notice it first as a pressure change. A thread appears online, and within minutes strangers are shouting at versions of themselves. An office meeting turns strategic, and suddenly you're cast as the obstacle, the fixer, the therapist, anything but a human with a boundary. A family chat explodes over nothing, and you're holding everyone's nervous system like it's your unpaid job. This is not random chaos. It's an engine. Public discourse, workplace politics, and social feeds run on a simple mechanism. People export what they cannot face inside, then fight it on an external screen. From Thoth's view, the us versus them cycle isn't a malfunction. It is the power source. The system converts disowned shadow into heat, clicks, promotions, and momentum. Outrage buys attention. Attention buys influence. Influence buys survival. When you start to see this, the air in the room changes. You are no longer inside the movie. You're in the projector booth, watching reels of unintegrated fear, spinning to keep the theater full. Here's the trap. If you're awake enough to read motives, regulate your body, and speak with precision, the engine drafts you as containment. Your steadiness becomes a public utility. People unconsciously assign you the role of absorber, translator, confessor. You become the designated listener, the moral referee, the one who can handle it. It looks like respect. It feels like slow bleed. In projection economies, coherence is expensive, and projection is cheap. It costs nothing to cast blame, and everything to metabolize your own material. So the awake pay. You pay in time-long DMs at midnight. You pay in health-tight jaw, tired eyes that buzz in your chest after a pointless debate. You pay in creative loss, your best hours spent cooling fires that should never have been yours. Not your storm, not your job. Some of what we're about to map can't be said openly here. Join the free newsletter at the link in the description for the uncut field notes. For a limited time, you'll also receive a free ebook copy of our book when you enter your email. This isn't a reward. Once you witness the engine, patterns jump into high relief. The colleague who only plays devil's advocate is protecting a fragile identity by making curiosity look like disloyalty. The relative who picks fights on holidays is avoiding the grief that silence would surface. The influencer who thrives on weekly enemies is feeding an audience's adrenaline way more than their wisdom. Look closer, and you'll see the energy math. Projection creates a quick, addictive rush. Integration is slower and private. The market rewards the rush. The office rewards the rush. The timeline rewards the rush. But your body doesn't. You can feel the metabolic mismatch. Your attention narrows. Your breath goes shallow. Your hands cool. Your system prepares to defend a boundary that the room refuses to name. This is the moment you used to mistake for duty. Now you call it what it is: conscription. Projection also dresses itself in virtue. Righteousness is the perfect camouflage. No one wants to oppose justice, safety, or the mission. But watch how these words get wielded to justify the same old displacement. Justice, without self-inquiry, becomes a weapon. Safety, without nervous system literacy, becomes control. Mission, without honest feedback, becomes theater. In each case, the loudest voice often drags the group into their unprocessed material and dares anyone to call it out. You learn the cost of trying. The room labels you difficult, too intense, overthinking. Translation: please, stop naming what's actually happening, because if you keep naming it, the engine stalls and we don't know who we are without it. Approval is a leash. It's tempting to fight every instance. You compose 3 responses in your head, each sharper than the last. You imagine the clean takedown, the brilliant thread, the meeting where you finally win. But the engine doesn't care about truth. It cares about throughput. It will feed on your accuracy just as readily as it feeds on their defensiveness. Remember the physics. Attention is fuel. Where attention goes, energy flows, and engines do not self-correct while they're being fed. The only move that starves the machine is withdrawal of charge. Not silence as suppression, but silence as sovereignty. You choose when, where, and to whom your depth is offered. You measure outcomes in nervous system terms. Did that exchange leave you more coherent or less? You begin to treat your attention like a scarce, sacred resource rather than public property. There's also a quieter layer. Projection sticks best to old wounds. The engine finds your Velcro childhood roles, legacy guilt, inherited scripts and tugs. That's why you get hooked in certain rooms and not others. In one context, you're immune. In another, you're 8 years old, trying to keep peace you didn't break. Seeing the hook is half the healing. The rest is boundary practice in tiny, precise moves. Fewer explanations, slower replies, shorter meetings, refusals without essays. No is a full sentence. Not today is a complete paragraph. You learn to differentiate between someone processing and someone performing. Processing has breath, pacing, humility. Performing has urgency, spectacle, and no curiosity. You stop volunteering to be the stage. Here's the paradox. When you refuse to be the container, people may accuse you of disappearing, abandoning, becoming cold. What's actually happening is cleaner. You're ending the subsidy. For years you provided free regulation, free translation, free forgiveness. You did it because you could, because it felt kinder, because the rooms kept asking. But kindness without boundaries breeds resentment. Service without consent breeds harm. So you redesign the economy. You offer containment where there is consent, reciprocity, and readiness. You let natural consequences teach the rest. You save your oxygen for the fires you are called to tend, not the ones that demand to be fed. At scale, this is why awake people appear to vanish. They haven't fled reality. They've stopped underwriting unreality. They've seen how projection engines convert life force into spectacle and have chosen not to be the battery. They take their charge back to places where depth circulates. Honest friendships, slow craft, nature, practice, work that requires presence rather than performance. The attention you withdraw from the theater becomes attention you invest in the workshop. Proof beats persuasion. The first time you step out, guilt will try to pull you back. It will speak in the voices that trained you. Be useful, be available, be nice. But usefulness without truth is exploitation. Availability without discernment is self-erasure. Niceness without integrity is cowardice wrapped in sugar. You didn't disappear. You stopped volunteering as a base gear, screen for other people's films. You chose to stop participating in games that punish honesty and reward drama. And when people ask why you're so quiet now, you can smile and tell them the simplest truth. You're protecting the signal. When the mask stops fitting, the next chapter begins. There's a moment the mask that got you this far begins to itch. It's subtle at first, tightness in the jaw before a call, the small lie your mouth says while your chest steps back, the way you scan a room for who you need to be instead of who you are. The persona did its job. It won you approval. safety, paychecks, belonging, but the bill arrives. Awareness makes the costume seems visible, and once you see them, you can't pretend the fabric still fits. Jung called it the persona, a socially useful mask between you and the collective. In healthy seasons, it's a tool, like a raincoat in weather. As individuation deepens, the coat becomes climate. You don't take it off, it takes you. The voice that once adapted now edits itself mid-sentence. The smile that used to mean, "I'm fine," now means, "I'm not allowed to be real here." You feel it as micro betrayals, smoothing edges, lowering volume, translating soul into small talk. Efficiency becomes erasure. You begin to notice how much life is missed while maintaining image. Meetings where you perform competence instead of doing the work that matters. Dinners where you assemble anecdotes to keep the table comfortable while your deeper questions go hungry. Online, you post the polished version and watch your aliveness drop a degree. Persona pays in applause and charges in energy. The ledger never balanced. You are just too busy to audit it. Collapse rarely starts with a grand event. It starts with a body that won't collude, a Sunday heaviness that turns into Monday nausea, a calendar that looks like success and feels like exile. The inner voice stops negotiating. No more rehearsed yeses, no more immaculate explanations, no more managing other people's perception at the cost of your integrity. The self that once folded into roles, ideal colleague, dutiful child, charismatic friend, no longer fits those corners without tearing. You choose truth over performance, breadth over branding, presence over polish. Around you, expectations get louder. Just be a team player. Don't rock the boat. We're counting on your positivity. These aren't invitations. They're containment spells. They keep the mask on by framing honesty as harm. But honesty isn't harm. Pretense is. You can feel the moral injury of smiling through what needs naming. You can feel the anger that follows the clean kind that arrives when boundaries are crossed by your own compliance. Approval is a leash. People who haven't crossed this threshold will call what's coming a phase, burnout, a mood. You recognize the architecture. The soul won't sign partial contracts anymore. It refuses roles where truth is a liability and depth an inconvenience. You stop auditioning for rooms that reward performance over presence. You test where your voice can stand at full height without bending into caricature. Some rooms shrink, some relationships thin. Loss arrives, but so does oxygen. Here's a mercy. The collapse simplifies. When you can't play a part, decisions get clear. You leave meetings earlier because the real conversation isn't happening there. You answer emails later because urgency isn't importance. You disappoint people faster because delaying truth doesn't soften it. It rots it. Each small refusal returns a percentage of yourself. With every retrieval, the world recolors. Food tastes like food again. Silence stops being empty. Time stops being a corridor you sprint down and begin to inhabit. Practically, you start running experiments. You tell one inconvenient truth and watch who can hold it. You try one meeting without the "I'm just checking in" softeners, and see whether the room can handle directness without punishment. You write your values in clear nouns and verbs, not slogans, and compare them with your calendar. If the calendar doesn't match, the calendar changes. You discover that authenticity isn't a mood, it's logistics. It's how your hours arrange around what matters. And then there is grief. Grief for years spent learning how to be liked instead of known. Grief for versions of you that survived unkind rooms by being impressive, helpful, agreeable. You thank them. You retire them. The mask wasn't a lie. It was a bridge. It carried you here. Now you need a door. What comes next isn't exile, but economy. When you stop paying for belonging with fragments of yourself, you start to accumulate attention like saved breath. That surplus isn't for performance. It's for building. In the next chapter, we'll open the ledger where your energy leaks, where it compounds, and how to fund the life that fits the self you refuse to split. You can measure the turning point not in beliefs but in burn rate. Before, you could sit in noisy rooms and come out merely tired. Now you leave, hollowed. The difference isn't oversensitivity, it's accounting. Once you stop paying for belonging with small cuts to your truth, the books come out. You see where the life force goes and what returns. You notice the exchanges that leave you clear and the ones that fog your mind like a busy screen. Energy has a ledger, and awareness makes you read it. Coherence costs. It takes calories to keep your nervous system steady while a meeting spirals. It takes breath to translate depth into small talk that won't spook the table. It takes muscle to hold a boundary when a colleague turns their deadline into your emergency. People call you grounded, which is praise on the surface and a hidden invoice underneath. The more regulated you are, the more the room quietly outsources regulation to you. Their savings become your spend. Projection is cheap. Integration is expensive. Start tracking. Notice what presence actually requires. You think a 1-hour call takes an hour. It doesn't. It takes the prep before, the recovery after, and the background vigilance that keeps you from saying the thing that would change the room. That's 3 hours, not 1. Dinner with old friends might be 2 hours, but if you perform a version of yourself to keep ancient dynamics alive, you'll pay until Wednesday. Conversely, a quiet morning in the park might be 30 minutes and return 6 lucid hours. Not all hours are equal. Some compound, some drain. Awareness rewrites your pricing. You stop undercharging honest work and overpaying for polite dysfunction. You learn the difference between generous and leaky. Generous is a choice inside your capacity. Leaky is a habit that avoids discomfort by spending your future. Generous says yes because there is peace to give. Leaky says yes to keep the peace. The felt sense is unmistakable. Generous leaves a warm afterglow. Leaky leaves a film. The awake often carry invisible roles: translator, buffer, mood stabilizer, culture carrier. None of these appear on a contract, yet they consume the budget. You edit your words so they land. You soften blowback with humor. You sense the unspoken and name it carefully so no one is humiliated. Over time, this becomes just what you do, and just what you do becomes the norm the group expects. The moment you stop, the room feels the weight of its own unprocessed material and calls you withdrawn, difficult, disloyal. Translation: the subsidy has ended. Protect the signal. That's the whole move. Signal is what's true before you explain it. When the signal gets fuzzy, all strategies get worse. You answer the wrong emails, take the wrong meetings, accept the wrong invitations. Clean signal means your inner yes divided by no fires on time. Protecting it looks unglamorous from the outside. Earlier nights, fewer tabs, fewer committees, simpler food, walks with no podcast, 1 glass of water before 1 reply. It looks like choosing a job with less prestige and more autonomy, because prestige costs noise, and autonomy buys signal. There's a physics to extraction. Rooms with low awareness generate friction, micro-contradictions, vague asks, unowned feelings that someone must convert into usable motion. If you're competent and awake, you will be volunteered. You will draft agendas no one reads, write summaries no one follows, re-explain policies no one honors, soothe egos no one examines. Each task looks minor. Together they are a second job. The company thanks you with slogans. The family thanks you with silence. The timeline thanks you with likes. None of those pay the bill your body receives. At first, you try to get better at the extraction game. Better systems, clearer emails, stronger frameworks. Useful, up to a point, but frameworks can't fix an economy that rewards drama over depth. The fix isn't perfecting your containment, it's pricing your containment correctly and then changing markets when the price won't clear. That may mean money raise it. It may mean scope shrink it. It may mean access limit it. It may mean exit walk. The question that governs your calendar shifts from, am I capable, to, Is this coherent? Capability is a trap for the competent. You can do almost anything once. Coherence asks whether the thing belongs in your life at all. You start saying no to what you can do in order to make room for what only you can do. That distinction is sacred. The mask wanted you interchangeable. The soul wants you irreplaceable. You'll notice that energy compounds like interest. One protected morning funds an entire afternoon of lucid work. One honest conversation saves 30 hedged ones. One 15-minute boundary prevents a 3-month resentment. Likewise, one sloppy yes breeds a week of cleanup. Awareness lets you see the biments, compound effects early enough to choose. This is why the awake appear strict. They aren't allergic to people. They're allergic to entropy. The audit gets specific. Which clients return clarity? Which friends ask for your time and then meet you with their whole presence? Which projects give you back a better self than you arrived with? Put a plus next to those. Which contexts consistently generate fog, urgency, self-betrayal? Put a minus. Then believe your marks. You don't need another epiphany. You need new logistics. Reduce frequency. Shorten duration. Move to asynchronous. Set an office hour. Say, happy to help. Here's the container. Watch how the true asks survive and the extractive ones evaporate. There's a myth that leaving the extraction economy makes you selfish. In practice, it makes you precise. When you stop bleeding into everything, you can choose where to pour. You find the people who are doing their share of inner work and offer them your best. You choose work that costs a lot but returns more. You build a cadence that keeps you human. That's not withdrawal. That's stewardship. Here's a small exercise. For 7 days, put a plus or equals after every interaction in your calendar. At the end of the week, cut one recurring minus by half. Don't announce it. Just change the container. Replace it with one protected block labeled signal. Then guard it like you would a newborn. Because that's what your next chapter is. Something alive that needs warmth, not noise. In the end, energy economics explains the so-called disappearance. When the ledger is honest, the choices are obvious. You stop funding rooms that spend your life badly. You start investing your attention where it multiplies. The surplus becomes the seed for the life that fits. In the next part, we'll name the cocoon the Hermit Phase, not as escape, but as a deliberate savings plan for consciousness. Withdrawal has a bad publicist. People call it ghosting, quitting, antisocial. From the inside, it feels like something else entirely. Oxygen returning, signal clarifying, the first full breath in years. After you close the open leaks and stop underwriting rooms that spend your life badly, your nervous system does what any good steward would: shifts you into a conservation plan. The world reads absence. Your body registers repair. This isn't collapse. It's a cocoon. Cocoons look like nothing. From the street, it's just a quiet flat, a desk lamp on at odd hours, a calendar that suddenly has whole afternoons unbooked. Friends text, "Where have you been?" And you type back something gentle because the true answer is difficult to translate. I've been with myself in a way that isn't performable. The Hermit Phase is not an ideology. It's a container. Its design logic is simple. Remove performance pressure. Remove chronic interruption. Remove audiences who unconsciously grade your becoming. When those variables drop, integration rises. Inside, time stops moving in meeting-length chunks and starts behaving like weather. Some days are fog. You sleep twice, make soup, write 3 honest sentences and call that a win. Some days are clear. You wake early, walk a long loop, and return with a paragraph that feels like a new continent. You make small, non-negotiable rituals, not because you're chasing optimization, but because rhythm is what heals mammals. A set wake, a set meal, a set hour where you sit without input and let your mind show you what it's been holding behind the noise. At first you feel ridiculous, then you feel relief. Finally, you feel results. Solitude has a reputation for loneliness because most people meet it only after rupture. But voluntary solitude isn't absence. It's presence unshared. There is a difference between isolation and aloneness. Isolation is hunger for contact and no bread in the house. Aloneness is a warm kitchen with the stove on and a pot simmering. You know you'll feed others later. First, you season the broth. Solitude is medicine. It metabolizes what arguments can't touch. It lets your anger complete its circuit without a target. It lets your grief fall all the way through the floorboards and hit earth. It lets your joy swell without needing to be captioned. Without the old audiences, your voice loses its stage fright. It stops pitching itself to imagined critics and starts talking in its native tempo. You'll hear it in your drafts. Fewer disclaimers, fewer apologies, clearer nouns and verbs. The old reflex to soften truth so it survives a committee fades. Your writing, your prayer, your designs, your plans, they begin to sound like someone who trusts themselves. This isn't bravado. It's the absence of distortion. Shadow work changes in solitude too. In public, shadow processing easily becomes performance. Immaculate vulnerability, curated confessions, the safe emotion everyone will clap for. Alone, you don't need applause, and you don't get away with theater. You can sit with the parts of you that are still 8 years old and furious. You can listen without fixing. You can let the flood run until it drains. When no one is watching, catharsis has no incentive to fake. You aren't being real. You are just real. Energy returns in strange ways. You discover you need far less stimulation than you were taught to trust. One afternoon in a garden does more for your clarity than 10 inspirational panels. One page of a good book charges you more than 50 hot takes. Food simplifies and tastes better. Sleep arrives like a friend rather than a shutdown. You notice the relief of not having to explain your boundaries every hour. They are built into the architecture of your day. In the cocoon, architecture does the enforcement, so willpower can rest. People who love you may worry. They will read your quiet as a verdict on them. It helps to name the season. I'm in a deep work winter. I'll be less available for a dad. But I'm not gone. Please write when you want. I'll answer slower and truer. You can also offer a shape to your presence. A monthly dinner, a Sunday walk, a letter every 2 weeks. The point is not zero contact. It's honest cadence. You're not rejecting your people. You're refusing the tempo that kept you hollow. There are practicalities that make a hermit phase functional rather than performative. Money matters. Simplicity lowers burn rate and buys longer silence. If you can, choose work that trades status for autonomy. Prestige is expensive noise. Close your digital shop at set hours. Leave messages unsynced to your bed. Turn down opportunities that require you to become a stage version of yourself again, even if they pay, especially if they pay. The cocoon is a savings account for consciousness. Every deposit is time, attention, and breath, saved from spectacle. One fear will visit often. What if I fade? What if the world forgets me? That fear kept you busy for years. Look at what busyness purchased: recognition that didn't recognize you. Networks that only knew your mask. The cocoon's promise is quieter. Those who will meet you next will meet you, not your strategy. When the page, the canvas, the client, the craft get you back unmodulated, the work that follows won't need the old amplification. Depth becomes its own signal. Depth finds who can hear it. And yes, boredom will knock. Boredom is detox. After long addiction to speed, depth initially feels like nothing. Stay. On the other side of boredom is attention, with range again. The colors come back. You remember textures you dulled with notifications, the weight of a ceramic mug, the exact tone of dusk, the satisfaction of finishing a sentence that didn't need the internet's permission. Attention is currency. The cocoon is where you stop spending it like someone else owns it. Here's a simple way to build the walls. Choose 2 90-minute, no-input windows. This week, no feeds, no inbox, no research. Walk, write by hand, stare, pray, stretch, make something small. put the phone in another room like it's a sleeping child you don't want to wake. You will itch for the first 20 minutes. Then your mind will bring you the thing it's been trying to hand you for months. Take it gently. Don't post it. Let it grow in the dark where roots prefer to work. From the outside, this season reads like disappearance. From the inside, it feels like reappearance. You didn't go missing. You stopped being misshapen. And when the shape holds, when your voice stabilizes, and your days have a pulse that doesn't require applause, the next move isn't a return to the center. It's a step to the borderlands, where the world meets you at the edge of its noise, and you meet it at the edge of your silence. That's where you build what lasts. You don't return to the center after the cocoon. You learn the lay of the edge, the place where the city's noise thins and your signal stays clear. From here you can see both, the old game running on projection and performance, and the quiet field where your work actually lives. The border isn't exile, it's a balcony with a workbench. You can step inside to fetch people or materials, then step back out before the engine eats your breath. Less audience, more impact. Edges are practical, not poetic. They look like a one-room studio where the phone lives in the hallway and your day has a pulse. They look like a clinic with a waiting list you don't advertise, because word of mouth is cleaner than reach. They look like a small shop that opens 3 days a week for 4 hours. Cash flow steady, because the craft is honest, and the scope is sane. They look like guiding rites in a forest reserve at dawn, like midwifing grief with tea and blankets and a timer. Like building tools that help people feel their lives again. You step out of roles that reward noise and into roles that reward presence. Border dwellers develop boundary technology, not slogans architecture. You design your availability the way an engineer designs a load-bearing beam. Fixed office hours. A public inbox with an auto-response that explains how to work with you, and a private channel only for the few to whom you've promised speed. Working weeks that include silence as a non-negotiable, not a luxury. You build friction into places that once bled, no instant booking, a short application for depth work, a cooling-off period before commitments. Friction is not hostility. Friction is wisdom. It filters urgency addicts and invites the ready. Income becomes low noise. The center sells velocity. The edge sells reliability. You choose models that don't demand constant performance, retainers with clear scope, seasonal programs with recovery windows, productized services that don't cannibalize your spirit, craft objects priced for longevity. You stop trading adrenaline for money. Money earned in coherence feels different in the body. It doesn't spike and crash. You can sleep after you make it. Community reshapes at the edge. The loudest conversation in the square stops being your weather. Instead, you tend small circles with shared vows. We speak plainly. We own our projections. We don't do pile-ons. We rest before we react. The group is small enough to look each other in the eye when we're wrong. There's no point system for pain, no podium for confession. The circle isn't therapy unless it is. It's simply a place where minds don't have to pretend to be smaller to fit. Proof beats persuasion. The border also teaches cadence. Center cadence is drama, boom and bust launches, calendar stuffed to prove importance, a rush to answer every ping. Border cadence is tied in weeks, out weeks, service days, studio days, community nights, long mornings without speech. You stop apologizing for rhythms that keep you human. People who can meet you here are the ones you can actually help. People who demand the center's tempo will call you difficult. You've become comfortable with being difficult to the wrong rooms. Your language changes too. You no longer pitch. You describe. You don't promise breakthroughs. You plan containers where breakthroughs can occur if the person does their part. Your offers get smaller on the outside and larger on the inside. Shorter copy, clearer terms, fewer superlatives. You add a page titled, "Who This Is Not For," and feel the relief from both sides. Selectivity is not superiority. It's stewardship. When you stop pretending to serve everyone, you finally serve someone. People will ask whether you're hiding, The honest answer is no, you're pruning. The center rewards breadth. The border rewards depth. When you prune channels that carried attention but not life, what remains begins to flower. A dozen true clients will change more than 10,000 passers-by. A workshop of 12 can tilt a town. A book read by the right 50 cracks open a decade. Scale by resonance. Reach the ones who are already turning toward the door. There's a politics to the border. You refuse to burn your cleanliness in public brawls, and you refuse to hoard it. You hold your beacons where those already waking can see them without being blinded. You teach skills that keep people out of extraction economies, nervous system literacy, shadow integration, practical craft, honest money, local cooperation. You help them build small, durable pockets of coherence, a garden, a guild, a schoolroom with early light that function whether the center approves or not. The work is not a protest, it's a prototype. On hard days, you'll feel the center's gravity tug. An invitation arrives that flatters your old persona. A thread drags you back toward explanation. A family script tries to book you for unpaid mediation. You notice the tug because the cocoon trained your attention. The difference now is load capacity. You can step into the city, do what only you can do, and step back out before your lungs fill with smoke. The edge gives you exit routes. Criticism shifts shape out here. Instead of, "You're too intense," you'll hear, "Why so selective?" Instead of, "Who do you think you are?" you'll hear, "Can we scale this?" Your answer becomes a practice. Some things scale by replication, some by apprenticeship, some not at all. You standardize the teachable parts and refuse to mechanize the soul of it. That refusal protects the craft. It also frustrates people who want your depth without your discipline. You let frustration do its work. The border dissolves relationships that were built on your overgiving. There's a sweetness to the edge that no stage can match. Quiet competence. Work that requires your hands and your whole attention. Clients who thank you with changes, not posts. A sunrise that counts because you saw it. The private joy of finishing something true. That sweetness is why you left, and it is how you stay. When you measure your life by coherence instead of applause, the days stop needing to be narrated to be real. Here's a simple instrument to tune your edge. Write one sentence that names your border work. I hold X for Y in Z setting. Put it somewhere, you'll see it before you say yes to anything. Every offer must either strengthen that sentence or sit politely outside it. If it weakens the sentence, the answer is no. Precision is freedom. From the border, you can finally see what the center couldn't. You didn't disappear. You specialized. You became the kind of person who can keep a flame alive in wind. You became a place where others can arrive without turning themselves into content. And as the waves move, as more people wake up coughing from the city's smoke, you'll be here, not to drag them back to the square, but to hand them a map and a mug and a chair. The next chapter is how to build beside the old game so people have somewhere real to land. Arguing with the old city keeps you living in its weather. You can spend a lifetime correcting headlines, quote, tweeting bad faith, pleading with committees to do the right thing, and wake up to find your days converted into fuel for the very furnace you hope to cool. The projection engine is a master recycler. It digests your outrage and prints a bigger stage. That's why the awake stop trying to win the square. They build beside it. Not because they're apolitical or naive, but because architecture beats argument. When you give people a door that actually opens, you don't have to convince them to leave the room that never did. Proof beats persuasion. Building beside looks unremarkable up close. A teacher who refuses test prep theater starts a microclass 2 afternoons a week under a banyan tree, where kids read whole books and ask questions that don't fit bubbles. A chef who's done with influencer nights opens a 12-seat lunch counter with one soup, one bread, one dessert, everything grown within a bicycle ride. A therapist who can't flatten real grief into insurance codes offers sliding-scale depth groups on Sunday evenings. People bring tea, respect silence, and leave with language that makes pain shareable. None of these make good virals. All of them change nervous systems, which is what change is made of. When you build beside, you exit the attention economy and enter the coherence economy. Attention rewards spectacle and punishes nuance. Coherence rewards integrity and punishes shortcuts. Spectacle scales on heat. Coherence scales on trust. That means your growth model changes. You stop asking, "How do I get 100,000 strangers?" and start asking, "How do I keep 12 people safe enough to tell 12 more?" This is unglamorous math, and it's how cathedrals are built stone by stone, vow by vow, without demolition permits for the nearby circus. There's strategy under the poetry. Parallel realities require four kinds of structure: containers, cadences, covenants, and channels. Containers are where the work lives: rooms, gardens, workshops, kitchens, circles. Cadences are when it lives, tied like rhythms that keep humans human. Covenants are how it lives, agreements that make depth possible, like owning projections, resting before reacting, valuing slowness over spectacle. Channels are how people find it, quiet pathways that don't sell your soul. Word of mouth, long-form writing, a talk to 20 instead of a reel to millions. None of this is anti-technology, it's anti-hypnosis. Use tools that keep attention awake, not entranced. Expect friction from those invested in the square. They will ask for your position on every trending fire, as if the value of your bakery, dojo, or grief circle depends on your aptitude for public quarrel. Your position is your practice. Bread that is honest is a statement. A dojo that refuses humiliation is a statement. A grief circle that won't turn agony into applause is a statement. The loudest announcements are the ones you don't have to make because the room itself speaks. The way people feel when they enter, the absence of performance, the presence of consequence when vows are broken. Parallel realities broadcast on a different frequency. Those who are ready tune in without needing a campaign. If you want to find your parallel work, track where your disgust with the old system contains a design. Disgust is often unlived architecture misnamed as cynicism. Sick of feed-driven community? Draw the diagram for one that meets monthly, breaks bread, has 3 roles and 3 rules, and grows by apprenticeship. Tired of meetings that pretend to decide? Design a decision ritual with thresholds, clear owners, and a time limit where silence counts as no. Done with gig economy burnout? Create a seasonal offering with recovery baked in and price it to pay your winter. The critique becomes a blueprint the moment it specifies a container, a cadence, and a covenant. Until then, it's just fumes. You'll be tempted to make your parallel visible by attacking the old. It's a trap. The more you define yourself against the square, the more you orbit its gravity. Build for, don't posture against. Write the handbook you needed 5 years ago. Record the class nobody would let you teach. Plant the garden whose yield can feed 3 households and teach them to plant the next. Measure success by coherence and continuity. Did the room hold? Did the people return? Did the practice deepen? Did the work outlive the mood? Money behaves differently in parallel realities. Because you refuse spectacle, you also refuse the spikes that crash your body. Revenue smooths when you align price with the true cost of coherence. Your rest, your prep, your ritual, your learning. You will charge more than the circus charges for a ticket and less than the circus charges for a soul. You will offer scholarships without martyring your viability. You will learn the art of thresholds, who enters when, how they're welcomed, what they promise, what happens if they break it. This isn't gatekeeping. It's greenhouse keeping. Fragile things grow in regulated climates. There's governance here too. Parallel does not mean private monarchy. It means small enough to care and clear enough to correct. Publish your covenants. State your recourse. If someone refuses to own their projections, you pause their access. If you wrong someone, you name it and repair. Depth is robust when it is transparent. Whisper networks that idolize a founder replicate the very patterns you left. You're not building a cult, you're building a craft. What about scale? Some work should scale, water filters. Some should replicate, grief circles. Some should compounding, trust, therapeutic alliances. Some should remain bespoke, rites of passage. Your task is to choose the growth path that protects the soul of the thing. Productize where fidelity survives. Keep by hand where it does not. The question is never, how big, but how true at this size. When size begins to dilute truth, you've hit the edge. Build another node. Don't thin the signal. The center will call you elitist for being selective and unserious for being small. But selection is not exclusion. It's precision. Small is not timid. It's specific. The square confuses volume with value because it lost contact with interior metrics. Your metrics are different. Fewer relapses, more reconciliations, better sleep, craft that doesn't break, children who see adults keep a promise, elders who feel useful again. Try turning those into a KPI deck. You'll laugh, and then you'll get back to work, because work, not slides, is what heals. On days when doubt gnaws, remember why you're here. You tried the square's way. You argued, you campaigned, you over-explained. The engine ate your effort and grew. Then you built one honest room. Someone cried without being performed. Someone told the truth and didn't get punished. Someone learned to sit with the body's thunder and not outsource it. That room is a future in miniature. Protect it. Teach others to build cousins of it. Let the network of rooms outlast the trend cycle. A small practice for this week. Take one complaint you've repeated in the last month and convert it into a one-page design. Name the container, set a cadence, write 3 covenants, and choose a quiet channel to invite the first 5 people. Launch it small enough to succeed and strong enough to teach you something. Then stop talking about what's broken and show us what works. The square will be there tomorrow. You have a door to hang today. History doesn't change by consensus. It changes by cadence. A few step out first, stabilize a new rhythm, and only then can the many hear it. From the outside, their absence looks like abdication. From the inside, it feels like tuning. Thoth's initiatory lens is place. Blunt about this, consciousness moves in waves: withdrawal, integration, prototyping, return. Not everyone hears the tide at the same time, and that's not failure. It's physics. When you vanish from the square, you're not breaking the line, you're moving to a different shoreline where the next map can be drawn without hands grabbing the pencil. Ancient cultures hid this pattern in plain sight. The Desert Fathers didn't hate cities. They knew cities hated silence. They left to repair attention and returned with practices that could survive the market's heat. Mystery schools weren't snob clubs. They were containers that preserved techniques of seeing when empires prized spectacle over sight. Craftspeople apprenticed in small rooms because truth transmits skin to skin better than it does bleacher to bleacher. Even modern studios and cabins repeat the geometry. Shrink the audience. Deepen the discipline. Let the work find its right size before the world finds it. Absence is preparation. You can feel the wave working through your own story. First, there was the recoil from the projection engine, the step back that looked like quitting to people who couldn't hear the noise you were escaping. Then the quiet maintenance, sleep repaired, blood pressure returned to something human, mornings opened like windows. Then the itch to make small trials that didn't need applause, a circle in a living room, a tool you wished existed, a curriculum that taught what the syllabus forgot. Each phase has a sensation. Withdrawal tastes like relief salted with fear. Integration tastes like food that finally has flavor again. Prototyping tastes like risk with teeth but not fangs. Returning tastes like service without martyrdom. The wave isn't linear, it spirals. You will cycle these phases at different scales. A morning can include all 4. Step away from noise. Journal until the static clears. Build one real thing. Send it to the person who asked for it. A year can include all 4. A winter of hermitry. A spring of tests. a summer of offerings, an autumn of pruning. The spiral doesn't waste motion, it compounds it. Each pass strengthens the layer beneath. Withdrawals get cleaner, integrations get shorter, prototypes get truer, returns get steadier. You stop demanding permanent arrival and start trusting seasonal fidelity. The culture loves to misread the first movers. It calls them cowards for leaving, elitists for protecting their signal, failures for refusing to scale on command. But the first movers know something the crowd forgot. You cannot upgrade an operating system while it's processing 1,000 noisy tasks. You must quit the programs, apply the patch, and only then reopen what you choose. The wave is the patching process. You step out to remember what you are without interference. You integrate to keep the memory under pressure. You build to instantiate it in matter. You return to those who are ready to use it. You do not return to debate with those who are not. Timing matters. Step back too early, and you skip the apprenticeship of complexity. Step back too late, and resentment curdles the work. The body keeps the best clock. Your nervous system will warn you when the square's weather becomes uninhabitable. Shallow breath, brittle humor, the sense that you're always late to your own life. The signal of right-timed withdrawal is tenderness, replacing contempt. The signal of right-timed return is gratitude, replacing guilt. One tells you it's safe to leave. The other tells you it's safe to give. There is also a geometry to who rides each wave. Some are scouts. They bushwhack, take scratches, send back coordinates. Some are bridge builders. They turn coordinates into walkable paths, repeatable containers, clear covenants, viable economics. Some are hosts. They tend the rooms once the path exists, keeping the air breathable. Some are storytellers. They translate the path into language the next town can hear. You may wear more than one role across a life, but not at the same time. Confusing them burns circuits. Scouts shouldn't run hotels. Hosts shouldn't pretend to love bushwhacking. Storytellers shouldn't design the load-bearing beams. When you know your wave role, you stop envying the others and start completing them. What of those who don't ride at all? They aren't enemies. They're anchors. A society needs anchors to prevent drift while new charts are drawn. The mistake is to ask anchors to scout, or scouts to anchor. Spiritual adulthood is letting roles be roles without moral drama. When the time comes, some anchors will lift. The ones who won't aren't your assignment. Teach the ready. The wave respects ecosystems. The places where early schools hid gardens, caves, coastal paths weren't aesthetic choices. Nature trains attention differently than screens do. The bark's pattern, the river's cadence, the star's period. These are metronomes for a mind trying to remember original time. When you withdraw to a place with non-human rhythm, you borrow a clock that won't hurry you back to performance. When you prototype in such places, the designs you make inherit that non-hurriedness. They carry calm even when they go to market. The wider culture will occasionally spot the effects and ask for your method. This is the square's favorite way to domesticate a wave. Turn it into a workshop, clip it into bullet points, sell it to itself as productivity. Resist translation that trims the soul off the practice. You can share steps without surrendering spirit. Keep one layer of the work unpostable, teachable only by presence. Not because you're guarding secrets, but because some transmissions fry when converted to content. The wave dies when it's flattened. There's a responsibility that comes with being early. You didn't leave to flex your purity. You left to purify your offering. That means your return carries obligations. Build containers that don't leak. Price in a way that doesn't punish your future. State your covenants, so consent is real. Publish repairs when you fail them. Parallel realities rot quickly when they inherit the square's bad habits. Withdrawal is not a sainthood badge. It's a chance to grow up in private so you don't act out in public. If you need a simple test to know where you are in the wave, ask 3 questions and don't let your cleverness answer. Do I need to step away to remember? Do I need to sit still to integrate? Do I need to make to know? One will light up. Obey it. When you obey the right phase, time expands. When you disobey it, time collapses. The square collapses time for profit. The wave expands it for truth. And when you're ready to come back into view, you won't march to the podium. You'll knock quietly on the side door of those already stirring and pass them what you've made, a practice that holds on bad days, a tool that simplifies, a room where they don't have to pretend. You'll measure success in fewer relapses into performance, more reconciliations with the self, steadier sleep. It won't trend. It will stick. The world will keep asking where you went. Your answer is a pattern, not a press release. I went where the noise couldn't follow. I learned what my hands could make. I returned with something that can carry weight. In the next chapter, we'll name that return the selective, sustainable service of the quiet giver, so the gifts land where they can be used, and you remain whole enough to keep giving. You don't come back with a trumpet, you come back with tools. The edge trained you to measure in coherence, not applause. So your first act isn't to convince the sleeping, it's to steady the stirring. The return is quiet because noise jostles the medicine out of your hands. You move like a lighthouse keeper. Keep the flame clean. Aim it where ships already searching can see it, and stop shouting at the fog. The task isn't to argue, it's to offer. Who you serve clarifies fast, not the chronically combative who need a stage, not the curious but casual who want transformation without friction. You serve the ones with skin in the game, the person in spiritual emergency who needs a map that doesn't medicalize their awakening, the builder whose values outgrew their business and now needs an economy that won't hollow them out, the carer who holds death, birth, grief, or thresholds, and needs rituals that keep their own soul intact. You recognize them by their questions. Their questions are clean. They aren't asking you to rescue them. They're asking for a container to walk through something that matters. Service becomes a craft. You stop selling outcomes you can't control and start designing rooms that make outcomes more likely. Your method shrinks into simple bones, a beginning that slows the room until bodies arrive, a middle that names what's real without spectacle, an end that restores agency instead of attachment. You hold fewer people more deeply. You write promises you can keep. You place compassion and consequence side by side, so dependency can't grow legs. Teach the ready. Boundaries become part of the medicine. You say when, where, and how the work happens, and you say when it doesn't. Pricing reflects the cost of coherence. Your prep, your recovery, your study, your apprenticeship. It's not punishment, it's physics. You publish a page titled, "Who This Isn't For," and feel everything click. The page tells the truth your mask used to hide. No, you can't buy urgency here. No, you can't outsource your shadow work. No, we won't confuse catharsis with change. Say it clean, and the right people exhale. The wrong people leave. Both are mercies. You design for sustainability because collapse isn't noble, it's noisy. You build in recovery days like a pianist protects their hands. You keep one thread of work that doesn't depend on your charisma, a product that's honest, a curriculum that lives without you, a garden that feeds on time, not trends. You balance lived depth with asynchronous support, so neither steals oxygen from the other. You cap group sizes and keep waiting lists short enough to stay human. Complexity doesn't prove mastery. Continuity does. Language shifts from defense to invitation. You don't debate trolls. You write field notes for travelers. You don't justify your selectivity. You explain your thresholds. You don't publish everything you know. You keep one layer teachable only by presence, so the work retains soul. You replace, "Should I post this?" with, "Does this stabilize someone already in motion?" The yeses come from the body, not the algorithm. Repair becomes part of your public ethic. When you miss a promise, you name it, fix it, and if needed, change the design so it won't repeat. Repair stated plainly grows trust faster than marketing. You show your learning curve without turning failure into performance art. You stop pretending to be above the dynamics you teach about. You are in the work, not apart from it. You cultivate alliances with others building beside the old city, a grief guide who knows thresholds, a craftsperson whose ethics keep objects alive, a therapist who honors the soul without pathologizing its weather, a grower who thinks in seasons, not quarters. Your work cross-pollinates. The network is light on branding and heavy on vows. When a traveler needs something you don't hold, you make the handoff with respect. No empire, no referrals as currency, just a commons of competence. On the ground, the return looks ordinary. A room set before dawn, chairs placed in a circle that makes eye contact inevitable, a bell, a candle, a jug of water, the agreements printed where anybody can point. You start on time. You invite silence before speech. You ask people to name their projections aloud so the engine can't run. You end with what they will do differently when the door closes, not with applause. People go home and sleep better. They speak one truer sentence at breakfast. They cancel one leaky obligation. This is how movements move quietly, deliberately, one nervous system at a time. Not every offering is a circle. Some are objects that carry coherence, a tool that organizes attention, a book that reads like a handrail, a deck of questions with teeth, a course that teaches a practice instead of selling an identity. You make things that help people become less available to extraction, and you make them well enough that they don't need the Square's hype machine to travel. Understatement becomes a strategy. If it works, people will tell people. If it doesn't, the silence is instructive. You will meet pressure to scale. It's selfish to keep this small. Think how many you could reach. You've learned to translate these into their real forms. I'm uncomfortable that I can't access you at will. And I want your work without your discipline. Some things scale by replication, some by apprenticeship. Some should remain bespoke because their power is proportional to attention per person. You standardize what survives codification checklists, safety protocols, onboarding, and you keep by hand what needs breath and eye contact. You refuse to be everywhere so you can be fully where you are. Here's a practical frame for your return. Design a lighthouse offer, 1 page. Name the problem it holds, the container, where divided by when divided by how, the covenants, what we promise each other, the boundaries, who it's for divided by not for, the price that protects your future, and the outcomes you can actually observe, sleep, steadiness, fewer relapses into performance. Launch it quietly, iterate in public, but don't perform your process. Let competence, not charisma, do the heavy lift. You will still feel the Square's tug, especially on lonely afternoons. That's when ritual saves you. Touch the workbench, light the candle, reread the covenants, send one email to someone ready, take one walk that replaces explanation with weather. The border attends to you while you attend to them. This reciprocity is why you can keep doing it without burning down. The gifts don't land because you shouted. They land because you were there, steady. When someone finally looked away from the screen and asked for something real, you hand them a map and a mug and a chair. You don't drag, you don't dazzle, you don't debate. You witness them become slightly more themselves and count that as profit. The Square will call it small, your body will call it right, sized. In the final part, we'll stitch the pattern together: why disappearance is maturation, how to hold your line when invitations test it, and the simple choices that keep your life aligned with the soul that refused to split. What looks like vanishing is the most adult thing you've ever done. You stopped paying with pieces of yourself to keep other people comfortable. You saw the bell and chose a boundary. You felt the old approval leash tug and let it fall. You realized protest kept you orbiting the Square, so you built a prototype beside it. This is the stitch pattern under everything we've named: screen mask, ledger, cocoon border, build, wave gift. It isn't a trend, it's a maturation cycle. When awareness grows teeth, withdrawal isn't a tantrum, it's stewardship. There's a humility to this that social media can't stage. The work that matters most rarely announces itself. It shows up as a person sleeping through the night again, as a dinner with fewer lies in it, as a meeting that ends early because the real thing was said, and nobody tried to throttle it with diplomacy. You'll know you're on your path not when the timeline applauds, but when your body stops bracing. That ease isn't laziness. It's your life re-entering integrity. Everything you've done to get here reorders your days at the level of logistics. You keep your phone out of the room where you write. You schedule breath before speech. You treat attention as finite power and spend it like it matters. You guard sleep the way a mountaineer guards oxygen. You choose money that lets you keep your signal. You weed loyalties that depended on your self-erasure. None of this is glamorous. All of it is sacred. People will still pull at you. Some will dangle prestige that requires you to reenact your mask. Some will offer money that demands your nervous system as collateral. Some will ask for a quick favor that unravels a week of coherence. Remember your arithmetic. Ask, does this strengthen my sentence? I hold X for Y in Z setting, or weaken it. If it weakens it, it's expensive, no matter the check. If it strengthens it, it's affordable even when it stretches you, because alignment pays back in time. Keep a living ledger of promises to yourself, to the people you truly serve, to the craft, to the land you stand on. Promises are scaffolding. When the square's weather howls, promises hold you in shape. Promise to speak plainly. Promise to repair when you miss. Promise to rest before you react. Promise to refuse work that needs you dishonest. These are not slogans. They're load-bearing beams. The quieter you keep them, the stronger they carry. You'll also feel the ache of what you've released, identities you wore well enough to earn praise. Rooms where you knew the choreography and could purchase affection on cue. Let the ache finish. Grief is the tax the soul pays when it trades counterfeit belonging for the real thing. It leaves you solvent. After grief comes a different joy, one that doesn't need a witness. A sunrise that counted because you saw it. A paragraph that didn't explain itself and therefore stayed alive. A client's thank you that names a life change, not your performance. It's time to widen the circle carefully. You're not a missionary. You're a map maker. You don't knock on the doors of the deep asleep. You hang a lantern where the half-awake can find it. When someone barrels in with performance energy, you slow the room until their body arrives. When someone demands speed, you point at the covenants. When someone wants guarantees, you offer practice. Your task isn't to convert. It's to host conditions where voluntary change becomes easier than pretending. And when your signal dims, you close the door and tend the flame. Teach the listeners to listen to themselves. Show them the bell boundary move in 10 seconds, not 10 lectures. Let them feel the difference between projection and processing. Give them a one-page charter and a fortnightly circle. Give them a garden bed and instructions, and the patience to let soil learn them back. Don't hand out identities. Put tools in hands. A person who can sit with their thunder without outsourcing it is a person the square can't digest. That is revolution at human scale. The network grows by resonance. Rooms like yours appear in cities you'll never visit, held by people you'll never meet, linked by vows you wrote in a quiet winter with soup on the hob. You don't manage this. You tend your node and publish what actually works. Some will misunderstand and try to turn it into a brand. Let them tire. Others will copy badly and blame you when their choreography breaks. Wish them good weather. Keep your craft intact and your covenants public. The right ones will find you. When the world asks where you went, you can say it simply. I went where the noise couldn't follow. I remembered what I am without an audience. I built a room that doesn't need performance to function. If you're ready to stay awake in a world that rewards sleep, here's a chair. That's it. No superiority theology. No diagrams of doom. A chair, a jug of water, a practice done at the speed of breath. The rest is gossip. If you want the field manuals we can't publish here, join the free newsletter at the link in the description. Miss it. and you'll miss the maps that spare years of trial. For a limited time, you'll also receive a free ebook copy of our book when you enter your email. This isn't a reward. You've walked the arc the old stories tried to tell. You saw the screen and stopped acting in other people's films. The mask cracked, and you chose breath over branding. The ledger exposed its thefts, and you turned off the taps. The cocoon saved what mattered, and the border taught you cadence. You built beside rather than against. The wave carried you out and back with tools that work in ordinary kitchens. Keep going. Keep it small enough to be real. Keep it honest enough to be trusted. Keep it durable enough to outlive the mood. If you feel this on a deep level, comment, "I get the code."